In today's episode, I had a very insightful conversation with Larry Hagner, who's the founder of The Dad Edge. And in addition to being a father and a husband, he's also an author, an entrepreneur, and a coach. We go into pretty great detail about his mission with The Dad Edge and how it's not only changed his life, but it's also changed the lives of the thousands of men that he's worked with over the course of his career. So sit back, enjoy, and let me know what you think. My name is Andrew Stephen Rose. Welcome to the show. For years, I've been known as the gym guy. This show isn't about the gym. Some of it might be, but most of it's about business, it's about health, it's about your life, your relationships, and optimizing all of it to be the best you can be.
So I'll just start here. I kind of have a rough understanding of who you are from the first time I heard you, but I guess you give me your elevator pitch. Who are you? What do you do?
Sure, father of four boys. Been married now for 21 years. I'm the founder and host of The Dad Edge. Started The Dad Edge not because I knew everything there was to be a father. It was actually quite the opposite. I was had a unique story growing up, abandoned by my biological father twice, reunited with him when I was 30. Revolving door of absolutely toxic, crazy, horrible men. When I grew up, and just vowed not to continue the pattern. And Dad Edge got started with a really dark moment, and been podcasting now for 10 years, and about 1,200 episodes under our belt, and and just launched my fourth book.
What's your fourth book?
It's called The Spirit of Fatherhood.
Can you give me like a brief synopsis of what to expect?
Yeah, so it encompasses just about everything that is, I would say, near and dear to a father's heart. Number one is how to create a really good connection with your spouse, with your partner, your wife, whatever we're calling her these days. Like communication, connection. I still call them wives. People when people say this is my partner, I'm like, okay, well, this is my wife. So
yeah, it's your wife. But let's just call it what it is.
That's right. But she how to connect with them, how to communicate with them, how to fulfill her three basic needs, how to communicate, how to fulfill your three basic needs as a man. Also parenting, leadership, connection with your kids, how to basically even become your kid's 3 a.m. call, things like that. Also, there's a faith element to this book as well. So that's why it's also called The Spirit of Fatherhood. But yeah, that's really it. It encompasses everything that we teach over the past 10 years around parenting, marriage, leadership.
I love it. So actually, I went back and, when I, the first time that I heard you speak, I took a bunch of notes. So I just pulled that page out of my notebook. And I scribbled lots of stuff. And this is kind of how I take notes on a legal pad. I'll just write one word that really stood out. So I'll start, you already brought it up, and I actually wasn't going to ask about it, but I think it's a good jumping on point. You mentioned three basic needs, both yours and your wife's three basic needs. Mm-hmm. What are they?
Yeah, so a wife's three basic needs are to feel seen, heard, and safe. And our three basic needs as men is to feel respected, appreciated, validated.
So let's start with you. Tell me about what those three basic needs mean to you and how you foster them.
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I think a lot of people stereotype men as we're just like these sexual beings, and that's what we need, right? Fulfill our physical needs and we're good, right? That's actually not the case. That's a nice to have. It is somewhat obviously a need to have. But the three basic needs actually are in front of our physical needs. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. Ask any guy, I think, and they will tell you, one of the worst things you can do is disrespect me. Emasculate me, talk down to me, embarrass me, humiliate me. especially it's one thing to do it if it's just one-on-one. It's another thing to do it even in public, right? That is one
I talk
of the
about
worst
that a
things
lot.
you can do. Yeah. And especially like a woman who disrespects her man in front of the kids. Like, I think that I just don't think that's called for. And I think that really, really hits a man deep, like in the emotional balls, if you know what I'm saying. So like,
Yep.
I have this client right now, and he's working through marriage work with me. And when I first started working with him, his wife used to do really mean things, and she would do it like to get his attention, like, but it was also very emasculating and disrespectful. So like, she would they've got this 2-year-old daughter. She would whisper in the daughter's ear as she hands over the daughter to the husband. She's like, "Be careful, Daddy's really mean." And this guy is not a mean guy, but like, but things like that, they're just like, why would you? That's like one of the worst things you can do, right? Or like, Dad's dumb or Dad's stupid. He doesn't know anything. Like, that's horrible, right? So respecting a man is something that really creates this powerful connection between his wife and him, right? So my wife, so for instance, she views me as the head of the household, right? As the leader of the family. Now, my leadership roles are somewhat same but different than hers, right? So she actually has her role as well, but I lead, right? And usually they look to me as the final say, right? So if there's a disagreement or there's anything like that, like, my wife will honor me being like, well, what do you think we should do here, right? And she honors that. The other thing too is that if I throw down a disciplinary action and she doesn't agree with it, she will respect my disciplinary action and come to my side and be a team player, and support me in that, even if she disagrees with it. She'll disagree with me behind closed doors. So she'll say, hey, like, the kids will look at Mom and be like, hey, like, I can't have my iPad for a week. And she'll look at me, she's like, well, that's what your dad said. Yeah, then that's it. Yeah. And they'll be like, well, what do you have to say about that? And she'll be like, well, I'm with him. We're together on this. And then she might take me behind closed doors and she'll be like, a week was kind of extreme. Like, I might, like, 48 hours for that offense, I think would have been okay. But I did want to tell you that in private. Right. So like, that's a way I think of respecting. Right. And that's one of the things that my wife and I do. Now, I do the same thing with her. So if she throws down a disciplinary action and I don't agree with it, I've got her back, and I agree with her in front of those kids because we're a team. So I do the same. I'm not asking her to do anything, that I wouldn't do for her. So that's the respect thing. And I'm happy to move on to the appreciation thing if you want, unless you got a question.
Oh, sure, man. We'll just flow with it.
Okay. So appreciation, men work really, really hard, and I saw this thing on social media, and it said, a man will never get 100% of anything. And I thought, and I read the caption, and it's like, think about it. A man is pulled in several different directions, right? He's never 100% at work because he's thinking about his family, right? He's never 100% with family because he's thinking about how he needs to provide, right? So like, and even if he's with his friends or doing a hobby, he's always letting somebody down. So it's always like this thing of like, men, ask any man and will tell you that I always feel like no matter what I'm doing, I'm not giving 100% to somebody else who needs my 100%, right?
Right.
And now I think you can be fully present in the moment and be 100% there. Yeah, you can do that. But there's also this pull for a guy to be like, well, if I take my kids on vacation for a week, that's also a week that I'm not financially doing something to move the needle to provide for them more, right? So that's the battle in our own mind. But when it comes to appreciation, most men that I know that I work with, they work insanely hard, right, to provide. They do the best they can usually with what they have. Like, there are some complacent guys out there that are paralyzed by fear and paralyzed by a lot of things, and they don't do a lot. But I think for the most part in a man's heart, we truly want to do the right things. And when we are appreciated for those things, like, even if it's just like, if my wife pulls me aside and looks me in the eyes and she's like, I just want to tell you, I just really appreciate you making dinner tonight. It means the world to me. Just thank you so much for doing that. I'm like, dude, like, the skies open up, man. It's like, just like that acknowledgement for like our hard work. Like, guys really do want that, right? We really do. To some degree, it's hard for us to admit it. We need that, right? But we're not going to say we need that because that's weak, right? But that is something
you don't sound needy.
We really do need. Yeah.
Right.
And then the last one, this one's the hardest one for us guys to swallow. It just is what it is. It's the hardest one for me to swallow. And it really boils down to not just a man's basic need, but a human being's basic need. And that is, at the end of the day, one of our worst fears, our worst fear in life is we're not enough, we won't be loved, and we will be left alone. Like basically kicked out of the community or a family or whatever. Ask any guy, his worst fear is losing his family, because he'll be like left alone, losing his kids, right? So the validation aspect comes from like, am I a good enough provider? Am I a good enough husband? Am I a good enough father? Am I a good enough lover in the bedroom? Like all these different things. And if you don't believe me, I'm sure no guy listening to this podcast, me included, has ever looked over at your wife after having sex and was like, that was good, right? You good? We're good? Yeah, okay, good. Because we really want to know. It's like, even though we know that they're good, right? We're just like, we want that reassurance. Is like, yeah, you brought it, right? So like, that's a hard one for us to swallow. But at the end of the day, we're asking that question of ourselves all the time. Am I doing enough? Am I enough? Like, am I good enough at this thing, right? So like the validation aspect is a big one as well.
So that's a great, and I think for anybody that listens to this, it's for one to know that like it's not a one-off, right? Like you're not alone in the fact that like you need certain things, but we're hardwired to be we're hardwired to be the way we are, right? Like kind of suck it up and handle it. But the first time you spoke, or sorry, the first time I heard you, you talked about 5 dials, and I like feverishly took notes on all of it. But I think that's a good segue into that when we talk about
Sure.
the am I good enough? Am I doing enough? Can you go into that? What are the 5 dials and sort of what they represent and how to move the needle, so to speak?
Yeah. So I love this question because I just learned it myself. So every year for like the past 10 years, I hire a different coach every year. And I figure, hey, if I'm coaching, then I need to be coached as well. I need to constantly be learning and sharpening my own sword, right? So I've learned some and I'll always give credit where credit's due. The 5 dials are not mine. Those are Keith Yackey's from over at Married Game. Keith is actually my current coach right now. And the interesting thing, like I've had many people ask me, they're like, well, wait a second, like Keith's entire elevator pitch is, I help make you attractive to where your wife wants to have sex with you again. Like basically he takes his main client is a guy who is trying to be a good husband, right? But it's just falling flat. He's not having the sex that he wants, the intimacy he wants, the connection he wants, all of these things, right? And Keith teaches those skills. Now I will tell you, I've got a great marriage. And I've had a lot of guys ask me, why in the world would you hire Keith? I was like, because I do have a great marriage, but I want the freaking best marriage, right?
Yeah,
like,
just because it's great doesn't mean it can't be better.
Right. I just always want to learn. I always want to So been working with Keith now for the past 3 months, and I really do believe in what he teaches in these 5 dials. So I'll go through them. He calls them the 5 Ps, but also the 5 dials, and I'll explain each one. So, and what you want to do actually in these 5 dials is you want to do a tactic each day or something each day within these dials. So, like for instance, the partner dial, right? That's the first P. The partner dial is like, hey, am I friends with my wife, right? Am I a good partner? Am I a good man? Am I confident? Am I too needy? Like all these different things, right? Like, am I a good teammate with her, right? Intimacy, the whole 9 yards. So like the partner dial can be something along the lines of, I want to fulfill my wife's 3 basic needs, which is, seen, heard, and safe. So like a partner dial tactic could be like, I'm going to write her a Post-it note and I'm going to put it on the dashboard of her car. So that way when she gets in her car next, she's going to get some types of words of affirmation or appreciation or something like that, or how much I care about her or love her. Or it might be something like, I just ran an errand and I bought her some flowers, or I'm bringing her home her favorite coffee and I might write a note on the mug or something like that. Or like last night, here's a perfect example. We were in Idaho for this past weekend. I was there for a speaking event. My wife went with me, and we had just back-to-back nights of hardly any sleep, and we've been like absolutely exhausted ever since we got home. So I'm looking at my wife last night, who like literally looked like a zombie, and I was like, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" It was about 8 o'clock at night, and I talked to her. I pulled her aside. I'm like, "Hey, why don't you go to bed?" And she's like, what? I'm like, why don't you just go get ready for bed? Like, just go lay down, like, get under the covers, like, watch one of your shows, just completely just decompress and reset. And she's like, I can't do that. Like, it's 8 o'clock at night. I was like, you should do that. I was like, because if you get a good night's sleep tonight, I think that will be the reset that you need. And she was just like, oh my God, like, I don't even know what to say. Like, thank you so much. Like, I feel like I'm dying. Like, I'm so tired. So, like, last night, that's a partner dial, right? I'm looking out for her best interests, serving her in a way that she needed to be served, and doing something selfless. So that's the partner dial. The next one is the parent dial. This one is, if you think about this, this is where guys, it's like, hey, I can be a great husband, but what if I'm not the most patient dad? What if I'm not a playful dad? What if, like, I just talked to a woman yesterday who hired me for a corporate event, and she was telling me how she's going out of town, and her husband was sitting on the couch while she literally meal prepped for all of her kids for the 5 days that she's going to be gone, and literally had to get everything ready and write all the notes. She's like, I'm actually scared to, like, leave him alone with these kids. Like, I'm afraid, so think about that. Like, if your wife is saying, like, I don't trust you with our children, that's a huge red flag, right? Like, think about this for a second, not to get too graphic, but this is how Keith actually described it, and it made a lot of sense. Your wife grew this human being in her body for like 9.5 months, right? And then she went through the horrible, painstaking labor of having this child. Then she probably breastfed the child or whatever else. So she was the one getting up in the middle of the night. So, like, she's mama bear. Like, this child or kids, right, mean everything to her. And if you lose your shit because somebody spills a thing of milk and blow up and go nuts, like, that does not make you any more attractive to your wife. The guy who's cool, calm, the lowest heartbeat in the room, the one who's playful with his kids, the one who, like, mom can leave for a few days and know the kids aren't going to die, like, that is super freaking attractive to your wife, right? Is how good of a dad you are. So that's the parent one. The next one is the producer. This one's super easy. It takes us 30 seconds. Like, are you making enough money, right? It really hits upon that third need of safety, right? There's a term out there. It's called financial intimacy. Your wife needs to know, like, do we have enough money for groceries and clothing and all these other things, right, that we need, without stressing out over it, without freaking out over it. And what I'll tell you is, a lot of guys are like, okay, well, if I'm a producer, then that means I need to make millions of dollars. I need all these zeros in my bank account. That's actually not the case, because most surveys and studies show that most women, what they truly want, despite the stereotype there that women are gold diggers and all this other stuff, most women want their basic needs met and a little more. Basic needs met and a little more. And what that little more means is, like, so for instance, yesterday, my wife went out and dropped $280 on 2 pairs of football cleats yesterday. One for my 10-year-old, one for my 16-year-old. For her to go out and spend that money, she knew she could swipe that credit card and not be like, oh my God, like, well, what if we don't pay our electric bill? Right? So it's just being able to buy the food that's on your table, go out to dinner every now and again. You have a running car in the garage, and no one's stressing out when the kids need new cleats, right? And that kind of thing. So just be comfortable and just a tiny bit more. So that's the producer. The fourth one is the player. The player is one that I needed, quite honestly, the most help with, and I've actually gotten better at. Player is, are you playful? Are you humorous? Are you fun-loving? Can you go with the flow? Or if something, if there's a obstacle, or there's a curveball that happens in your plans, do you freak out and be like, man, I knew this day was ruined or whatever? Or can you just, like, laugh it off? And, like, if you can tickle the kids, wrestle with the kids. Like, for some crazy reason, I actually studied this. My 8-year-old likes to be wrestled with, roughhoused, and tickled every night right before he goes to bed. And I'm like, why do you do this? Like, don't you get, like, all jacked up over this? He's like, no, it actually helps me sleep. Sure enough, he was right. I went and looked at the studies. Kids who are roughhoused with actually feel more calm when they're roughhoused with or tickled or whatever else, and they can relax more because they're actually getting the physical touch that they need. They're getting
right.
They're getting affection from their dad, and they're also literally getting tired. I didn't know that. For us adults, it would probably jack us up and we wouldn't be able to sleep. So that's the player.
Be up to like 3 in the morning.
And then the final one is where I would say it's the operating system for the other 4 and just how we operate, right? And that's the power dial. The power dial is confidence, right? It's this place that we lead because we love, right? And we lead without agenda, right? So like, for instance, here's an example of not being a powerful man, right? Or like doing things because you have an agenda. And I used to be this guy. Be like, well, maybe if I do the dishes and take out the trash and she sees me do it, maybe I'll get a little action later. That's not a powerful thing. That's like a desperate, needy thing, right?
Right.
And I would do things like I would make the plates kind of cling together. I'd like lift the trash can out kind of loud, kind of hit the wall on the way out. Be like,
Make it known.
Take this trash. Make it known. But no, it's like the power dial. It's like, no, I do those things because I'm the man. I do those things because I'm a part of this family. I do those things because that is who I am, right? But with all of this confidence, right? Not because like, oh, I'm going to do this because I want something, right? That's not a powerful man. So that the power dial really comes from like the operating system for the other four.
I like that. So how do you, so we have 5 dials, and it's like, you have your, you go through like an inventory, I guess, or like you go through the, how do you adjust them? How do you, like, what's your parameters for evaluating where you are in each of those 5 dials, and how do you go about moving the needle?
Yeah, so you're supposed to score 35 out of 35 every week. So in other words, 7 days a week, 5 dials, 1 point in each dial per day. So like, for instance, last night, I definitely earned my daily point with telling my wife to go to bed, right? I'd earned my player point because I wrestled with my kids, and I messed with them a lot actually yesterday. So I was playful, right? I was a producer. I was working yesterday. So, actually I landed another one-on-one client yesterday. So that was a producer dial. The parenting dial, I sat we have a hot tub, and I sat in the hot tub and just had this incredible conversation with my 18-year-old, just about his life and where he's going and what he wants to do and that kind of thing. And then the power dial, that's, like I said, that's just the way of operating. So like, for instance, I don't do these things. So like, for instance, I don't do these things because I'm trying to earn a point, right? I'm doing these things because I'm trying to deepen the connections and the relationships with people in my house, right?
I like it. So, in terms of, I actually tried this with my son. How to communicate with, whether it's your wife, your spouse, or your kids. There's a certain way you talked about communicating. Can you go through that quick?
Yeah. So with your wife, or with kids, or
either one.
So yeah, the cool thing about your wife and your kids is it doesn't, and this makes it really easy for us men, is that our wives and our kids have the same 3 basic needs. So my kids need to feel seen, heard, and safe, which makes it pretty easy for me because I know that the people under my own roof, all of them have the 3 needs. And it doesn't matter if it's a boy, it doesn't matter if it's a teenage boy, it doesn't matter if it's a girl or whatever, seen, heard, and safe. My 18-year-old still this day needs to be seen, heard, and safe. So, my question to myself every single day, and I utilize my calendar for this, is like, how do I connect with these people every day, right? And how do I go about doing that? So like, communication is a big one, right? And you alluded to it. And I would say there's several skills within communication. There's a lot of skills, and we have group coaching, but in my one-on-one coaching, I teach 10 of them over a 12-week period. So like, for instance, one of the things that is really powerful with communication, especially with your wife and kids, is knowing how to validate their emotional state, right? So like, and we get this wrong a lot because we're men and we're wired as such. So I'll give you an example. If I were to go to you, Andrew, and I'm like, hey man, like I've been going through a really stressful season. Like I'm out of shape. I got injured, several months ago with my knee. Not as lean as I used to be. It's really kind of taken a toll on my mental health. I want to get back to being in really, really good shape. I just don't know where to start, and I feel like shit. And if you were to be like, yeah, man, that sounds really, really frustrating, I'd be like, well, what the hell do you think I should do about it, right? Like, I'm asking you for as a man going to another man, right. I wouldn't waste my time or yours unless I wanted your help. right?
Right.
I'm like, hey man, like I want your solutions, like help me out, right? When it comes to our wives and kids, that's not the case usually. And I'll say sometimes that's the case because sometimes they're coming to you for solutions. But a lot of times they're looking to basically just connect with you. And we get this wrong because as soon as our wives start talking about something that's challenging them or something that they're going through, we immediately want to go into Mr. Fix-It mode. It's summertime. Do you mind if my son just says hello to you real quick?
Of course.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
He it's almost like he has radar of when I'm on podcast. This is Andrew. I'm gonna put this. You already,
I love it.
Excited because you talk so loud.
oh, I talk so loud.
And you laugh so loud.
I do laugh so loud. So
Well, he
Awesome.
laughs a lot.
This
That's
is
important.
Andrew. Yeah. This is Andrew. He owns a gym, as you can probably tell by his massive deltoids.
Yeah, I can tell.
So this is Lawson. He's my 10-year-old.
Morning, Lawson.
Hi.
What are you doing all summer?
I don't know.
Play football.
Play football.
Playing football?
Yeah, he's first year tackle football.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you know a
Did
position you want to play?
Ain't it like it was the one behind the defensive line? Can't.
Linebacker.
You want to play linebacker? All right.
Yeah.
No, behind. Oh, was I actually a linebacker?
Did I get that wrong?
I
You
I might have
did.
got that wrong.
I don't know.
I thought it was
I'm not too
linebacker.
keen on football.
Yeah, if he's behind the defensive line, he's a linebacker.
Oh, so then yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
So you want to play defense though?
Yeah.
What is it? What do you like about defense?
I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah.
You're comfortable with it? Yeah.
I
You-
know what I'm doing.
He just likes to go get the guy with the ball.
You just want to go get the ball. I love it. So what are you gonna do today? What's your plan?
I don't know. We're just going to the pool today.
Yeah, just going to the pool today.
I like that. I'll trade you. I would love to head to the pool right now.
I
It's
would
about.
too, actually.
It's about. It feels like it's about
At our
110
pool.
degrees here.
Ooh, yeah, it's hot. there.
It's
Well,
sticky
our
hot.
pool sucks. Our pool sucks because like it's so gross.
All right, we have a subdivision pool, and it's not the greatest, but
Yeah, it's it.
it's okay.
It's all. They always get shut down. It's like
Yeah.
mine's
Yeah.
closed like probably at least once a week.
Oh my gosh, that's fun. All right, we good?
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for jumping on, bud. Have a great
I
day.
love you too.
Yeah.
I swear, he's got like radar. He knows
That's
I'm
cool,
on these
though.
podcasts because he'll come jumping in. Thanks for humoring
Hell
him.
yeah, of course.
It's great, man. He'll come in and say hi to everybody.
I love that though.
But no,
I mean, it's
like-
real. Like it's cool.
Yeah. It is. It's fun. He's a good kid. So communication. So like, I would say, and I read this somewhere that about 80% of the time, when your wife is talking to you, she doesn't want solutions or advice. She just wants to connect with you.
Right.
And but how the real question becomes, how do we connect, right? Because in our minds, like, you connecting with me, if I were to come to you with that type of problem, is like, dude, let me help you.
Right.
And you would feel that connection to me, and I would too. Because I'd be like, please, man, that'd be great, right? But for our wives, when we start going into advisement role, what's actually going on in their mind is, you've shut off your listening ears, and all you're thinking about doing is replying to me, which doesn't make me feel connected to you. So, like, if my wife is venting about something, let's just say it's like a negative emotion. And by the way, there is no such thing as negative emotions. Emotions are neither good nor bad; they just are. But we as human beings, we think of something like overwhelm or stressed out or whatever as something that's weak, right? Or something that's negative. But let's just say she's overwhelmed. And I come home and she's telling me about all the things that have gone on during the day. The way I used to respond was, it was something like, well, it doesn't sound like that big of a deal. We can just do this for that and this for that and this for that. We'd be fine. And she would look at me and be like, are you even listening? I'm like, of course I am. It's just like, yeah.
I just solved your problem.
I know. I'm just like, so like, it sounds crazy and it sounds oversimplified, but if I just simply say, man, that sounds really frustrating. Tell me more about that. Like, if I put a label on what I think she's feeling and I say it out loud, what it actually does in her brain is it actually calms her amygdala down and it forces contemplation. And that contemplation is what actually makes them feel connected to us. So, like, for instance, if I say, man, that sounds really frustrating, Like, tell me more about that. In her mind, for a few seconds, she's like, am I frustrated? Yeah, I am frustrated. And as soon as someone identifies with what they're feeling, that's when the validation takes place, especially when someone else validates and sees them, right? Seen, heard,
Right.
safe, right? So if I see what she's going through, the emotion, not the solution, and I call that out and I just say, hey, tell me more about that. And she just keeps talking. Somehow, some way, I become the most interesting person in the world for her to talk to because I'm listening to her and I understand where her emotional state is at. And then sometimes, sometimes I'm confused, right? And as we all are, like sometimes my wife will come to me because she wants solutions. And if I'm confused about what she wants, I'll just simply say, hey, I want to be the best support for you that I possibly can right now. And I'm just confused on what that looks like. So, is it me sitting here listening? Because I'm all in on that. Or is it, do you want to talk solutions? I'm all in on that too. What feels best to you? And my wife will absolutely tell me, she's like, I just need you to listen. Be like, great. She's like, actually, I really need some solutions. I need advice. Great. We'll do that too. So like, it's actually really that simple, but validation is one, that's a key one. The other thing too is being able to ask what we call generative questions, right? Generative questions are based around appreciation, curiosity, bringing out the best in people, giving someone actually an emotional experience behind that question where they have to story tell. Like, for instance, how was your day is not a generative question. It's a terrible question. The intent behind that question is great because as a father or husband, you really want to know about your wife's and kids' days. Like, tell me all about it. I want to know. Story tell, please. But you get good, fine, busy, crazy, boring. You get these one-word answers. So the intent
Good.
behind the question is beautiful. Right, good.
Yeah.
But the intent behind the question is great, but the result is terrible. So instead, you ask deeper questions, right? So like, no jokes, by the way. This is kind of funny, but my oldest son is in his high school marching band, and he just got back from band camp. So as we sat in the hot tub last night, I asked him, I was like, what was the best part of band camp for you? Right? And then all of a sudden, like, he's thinking, you can see him thinking, and he's generating ideas and visions and experiences, and he's reliving those things. He's like, oh, I got to tell you about this thing. He's like, I was the leader of this one group, and we only had like 48 hours to put this routine together. We had to perform in front of all 300 people that were there. It was flawless. We were the only group that got a perfect score. Right. And like, I'm actually getting, like, it's a band story, but I'm getting chills because he was so excited telling me about it. I was like, dude, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, what was that experience like? Like, how much pressure did you feel when you were trying to plan something like that in 48 hours? And what did it feel like to be victorious over everybody else? What was that like? And then suddenly, like, that question's like, oh my gosh, like, and then that energy and that connection, like, you become the most interesting guy in the world because you've got really fascinating, interesting questions, right, that bring people into their into the things that they really want to tell you about, right? Now, if I would have been like, how was band camp? You'd be like, oh, it was good, right? But if I have a question like that requires him to go deeper, I'm going to get a much different answer and a much better connection with him.
Because I actually tried some of that with my 7-year-old, and it, because he's 7,
Yeah.
it's usually be like, it was
Right.
good. It's all right.
Yep, it was good.
What'd you do today? Stuff.
Stuff. Yeah.
But it's because he just started playing hockey, and
Oh, nice, man.
it was so I was out of town I was in Nashville last week, and his mom took him, and she had to get him ready and stuff. So it was sort of like, hey, asking questions like, what was it like last week? How did it feel? Like, what was your favorite? Because they do, it's like a learn to play hockey program here, and they've got them. It's only 45 minutes a session, and they have, I think, 7 different stations that they run them through. And it was that question of like, what was your favorite part this week? And he dug into it, which is a lot better than saying, hey, how was hockey last week?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, the questions that you get, man, like the questions that we ask will get a much different result if we just simply ask it differently, use different words, or get really, really deep with them. Yeah.
So this is a little bit of a segue, but you're super busy, obviously, with travel and work, books, your coaching, family. So and this is a concept that I work a lot with the guys that I coach, is like it's trying to find balance, but also the importance of prioritizing time and time with family. Especially when I approach from the coaching perspective of like, the training and the nutrition part, obviously, but my goal isn't to take time away from other things that are important. Like, because if you're not watering things, they will die. What's the first thing that you do every day, and why?
I work out every day. Yeah.
First thing.
First thing I do every day is work out. So I get up before my family. I go to the gym. I train, and like that is like my sacred time. Like for me, fitness, like you, I mean, like I've been doing fitness now for 30 years. I don't know if I'll ever stop. And it's all the, yes, you get a physical benefit. And I would say in my younger years, it was like 90% was for that physical benefit, right? Is because you wanted to have the abs, and you want to be lean, and you want to be muscular and all that stuff. Now I train because I need the right emotional state and the right mental state for my clients, for my kids, for my wife. And if I am not taking care of myself, then those things will not happen to the best degree. So, right now I'm a little under the weather. So for the past 2 days, I haven't trained in the morning. And it's been weird, like not starting that day out like that. I definitely notice a difference, right, in how I show up and how I do things and that kind of thing. Now, granted, I'm under the weather, so that's impacting that. But I've noticed that over the years that is so important that, so prayer time for me in the morning as well. Like I'll actually pray between my sets. Sometimes I'll listen to the Bible app while I'm working out. So like just getting that scripture in my life, that thing that's bigger than me, my creator.
Right.
That's really important to me as well. But those are my non-negotiables, right, is fitness. Sorry, they're like right outside brushing.
Oh, no worries. You're fine. It's fine. I got barbells over here. You got kids. It's all right.
Yeah. You hear the people deadlifting in the background of you. And
It's actually the guy that was deadlifting him. I've been in my office so many times when he's in the gym. He's probably he's just strong too. And I'm like, well, he's here.
Yeah, you just hear him in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think having those non-negotiables. But going back to your question, boundaries are a very, very big deal for me. So like, for instance, Mondays, right? Those are my podcast days. That's when I do all my interviews on Dad Edge, right? So I do all my interviews. Usually I do 3 or 4 on a Monday. So that way I don't have to think about podcasting for the rest of the week. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but like I don't want a podcast interview to disrupt the mental and emotional direction of being able to coach either a group or one of my clients, right? Because podcasting is one thing, coaching is another, and it requires just that different mind. So that's why I separate those days. I definitely separate, like even if it costs me money, I will not work with a client or a group or anything like that past 5 p.m. I will not do it. I've walked away from one-on-one clients that would pay a lot because they could only meet in the evening, and I told them, I was like, if you can only meet in the evening, I'm not your coach. Like I'm just not, because I'm not going to give up my family time for us to be on a call for an hour. I will not do it. I'm not going to miss a practice. I'm not going to miss a game. I'm not going to miss a birthday or a dinner for work, period, even if it costs me thousands of dollars. And it probably has over the years, but I'm okay with that. So those boundaries from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., that is all about my wife. That is all about my kids, period, end of sentence. No matter what's going on, whether it's a practice, a game, or we're hanging out as a family, or we're having dinner, it's all about them. It's really easy, as you know, to have like some sort of online business and you're always accessible. Yeah. I'm not accessible between 5 and 9 p.m. I use an app called Aro, which is ARO, which measures my time away from my phone. And I love that app, and I'll shut the phone down and put it in the Aro box, and I'm good. So yeah, those boundaries are key.
ARO.
Yeah.
I'm going to check it out. Because that's really,
it's great.
Like I was on a call with a guy last night, and it was one of those, when I send my calendar schedule out for people to book a call, I'm very willing to work. Obviously, I have to work that around the other things that I'm doing, right? So if I'm recording, or if I'm in another spot and I can't, fix my schedule a certain way, so I'll adapt it as people need, especially if it's a client that I've built some rapport with, and I'm like, this might be somebody that'll work with. But it was at 7:00 last night, and I found myself in a hurry to finish and get to dinner, right? And it was like I actually felt guilty because the call went a little. The guy was great. The call went a little longer than I would have liked, and it was one of those things where that boundary of, and I'm going to steal some of this idea because it really, when you're working remote, you're working online. You can work whenever and wherever. The problem is you can work whenever and wherever.
Yeah.
So it's really
exactly.
like, even on, like, I've found myself even trying to work like when I'm at the pool on a weekend, So setting a hard boundary of like, I'm going to stop working at this time, even if I've got still things that I want to do. Whether it's, time with family or, your spouse, your wife, a girlfriend, whatever it might be. And really prioritize that time. So in order for you to do, like, what time do you start? What time do you get up?
Not as early as you think. I get up at 6 every morning. I used to get up at 4. I stopped. It's funny. I stopped doing that back in 2022. My 14-year-old had this grand idea for us to do a bodybuilding show in April of 2022, and he told me that on December 31st, 2021. So like on New Year's Eve, and I was like, and he had already had the show picked out and everything, and I had worked out with the same workout partner at 4 a.m. for like years, and he's like, because we always sit down and we talk about like the big things we're gonna do on New Year's Eve, and my son looked at me, he goes, I want to do a bodybuilding show and you're doing it with me, and I'm like, you're 14. I was like, they don't have bodybuilding shows for 14-year-olds. He's like, actually they do.
He already did his research.
He's like, yeah, he's like, I already did my research. He's like, there's one on April 29th. It's not far from here. He's like, I can be 14 and do it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. I was like, it's like 16 weeks away. I need like 6 months. He's like, yeah, but I think we can do it. So I stopped working out with my workout partner, and I started working out with him after school. And I started just changing my routine a little bit. So I'd get up at 6 and do cardio, and then I'd meet him after school and we'd work out. The funny thing is like, I always thought like the grinding thing, like getting up at 4 a.m., like 4 a.m. club and all this other stuff, and like was doing me justice, but shockingly, and it's not shocking because it's actual science, but like logging those extra 2 hours of sleep like increased my fitness level, reduced my body fat, increased my testosterone so much. Like I was just like, oh my gosh, like that 2 hours of sleep like actually really helps my level of fitness that I want to get to, and actually getting up earlier is hindering it. So, and I'm not willing to go to sleep at 8 o'clock at night. That's just not going to be in the cards for me. So I just get up at 6. I'm usually home by 8. And usually my kids are, just rolling out of bed around that time, except for my big ones, my big guys, the 18, 16-year-old, they're already at school by that time. But yeah, usually home by 8, start work at 9.
I like it. How long did it take you to figure that out, the boundary part?
Man, I'm still figuring it out. Meaning like there are still times where I break it or I want to break, and like working with clients or working past 5 p.m. I won't do that. But will I go on and slip and check social media or check my email in the evenings? Sometimes I do that. So like I would say I am not perfect at it yet, but I would say maybe about 90%. But it used to be the other way around. I was probably good 10% of the time, right, and 90% of the time I was bad. So the ratio has definitely changed, but I'm still, I'm still just needing to be even more disciplined with it.
Well, I appreciate you doing a podcast on a Wednesday.
Yeah, no, I'll do other podcasts on,
right,
but my own, like they're always on Mondays.
I dig it. Last thing, I think the last thing, maybe. In all I wrote, and I underlined it with a squiggly line, I wrote 6 seconds. Do you remember what you were talking about?
Is it the space between stimulus and response if something bad happens versus like losing your crap?
Well, you were talking about in terms of like human, like connection, the connection with your kids, connection with your wife, that sort of, the 6-second embrace, so to speak. Like what does that explain? I know what it means. I have practiced it and it works flawlessly every time.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
So the 6-second, I believe this was John Gottman that talked about that. I'm almost positive it was him. So the 6-second kiss with your wife, right, will be more connecting than like as we pass by and we just give each other a peck on the lips, right? Like that kiss that you hold for 6 seconds. And if you think about it, 6 seconds isn't that long, but when you're kissing, 6 seconds can feel long, right? And if you think about hugging somebody for 6 seconds, that's when you start to think like, are they going to let go first or am I? This is right. But they're also like within that 6 seconds, they're also like, wow, I feel really like close to this person. Right. So like if you hug your kids, like, like my older kids, right, it's easy for us to kind of like do like the side ass out hug, the bro hug type of thing. But if I really bring my kids in, no matter how old they are, how big they are, whatever, and I just hug them and hold them for like 6 seconds, and sometimes I can even tell like it's awkward for them, or sometimes they'll even do it to me, and like I'll hug them, especially my older one will do this, and I'll hug him and I'll rub his back and I'll start to let go. He's like, I'm not letting go, and I'm like, okay, and then I'll hug him back, but it's one of those things of like sometimes it can feel awkward if you're not used to it. But it also sends this message of like, man, I am all in. Like I'm all in with you in this relationship, right? I'm not doing this area. It's like a handshake, right?
Right.
My wife and I were just talking about this because we were at this event, and there was this one guy that came up to us and like literally he just grabs your fingers. I'm like, dude, like I cannot stand when people don't know how to shake hands. And, being able to shake hands with someone, like giving them that respect of like web to web, a good solid grip, look them in the eye, nice to meet you, right? It's very nice to meet you. And like that goes a long way versus like just this, like I didn't even put any effort into like this finger handshake, right? Well, hugs and kisses are actually the same way. People can say, well, is this person, in it or are they not, right? Like what does this hug or this kiss actually say about them, and what does it say about us? But yeah, if you really want to deepen the connection with your wife, kiss her for 6 seconds, hug her for 6 seconds. Hug your kids for 6 seconds. I wouldn't recommend like kissing your kids for 6 seconds. That's just kind of weird. But
that just got weird.
6 seconds. Yeah, it just got really weird, right? Yeah, so don't do that. Disclaimer there.
Love it. All right, man. That's all the questions I have. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do it. I know you're super busy, and once I get this all queued up and edited and stuff, we'll split it into some different pieces of content and stuff. I'll send it your way. But if anybody wants to find you in terms of whether it's your books or your podcast or your coaching, how they find you?
Just the easiest spot is thedadedge.com. We've got a bunch of free resources on there. If you're interested in the mastermind, we have a landing page for that too, just thedadedge.com/mastermind. We got 2 different programs, one for business owners, one for non-business owners. But you can find me on social media under The Dad Edge. My name is unique. It's Larry Hagner. There's not many of us walking around. If you Google me, I'll come right up. And all the books can be found on Amazon.
Beautiful. Appreciate it. Listen, man, thank you so much for the time. I loved it.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to take a minute to thank you for listening to the show. Whether you watched it on YouTube, whether you streamed it on whatever podcast streaming service you choose, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate it. This show has been a blast to bring back. I'm enjoying everybody that I'm speaking with, and I'm having a blast making the content that I'm making for you guys. But I wanted to talk a little bit about why I'm here. As you may already know, I'm a coach. I've been a coach for over 20 years, and I've recently changed a lot of how I approach my coaching and the coaching program that I offer. So if that's something you want to know a little bit more about, click on the link in the bio. Check out what I'm about. And once I've gained your trust, let's talk about working together. Thanks again.